I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture.
Ask anyone in 2007 what they thought of Bioshock 1. They'll tell you it's a masterpiece. It's one of the most critically acclaimed titles of all time. Despite being a shooter, it could still go toe-to-toe with its peers in that time. I finally got around to beating it, and here's what I think.
Papa loves mambo, Mama loves mambo. Look at him sway with it, getting so gay with it, shouting ole with it, wow. Papa loves mambo, Papa loves mambo, Mama loves mambo, Mama loves mambo. Papa is great with it, swing like a gate with it. Wait with it now, he goes to.
Bioshock tells the story of an underwater utopian city called Rapture. Rapture was built by Andrew Ryan. Think Mr. House and New Vegas, except it's underwater and everyone went crazy because of gene splicing. Andrew Ryan is what happens when libertarians get their way. One of the main gameplay mechanics is the use of Atom. Atom is a currency used to purchase DNA enhancements called plasmids. These range from zapping people with your fingers to telekinetic abilities. Now, I don't want to spoil too much, but essentially most people in Rapture have either been killed or gone insane due to the use of modifying their bodies with Atom. That's all you need to know for now. You, the main character, some schmuck, are involved in a plane crash over the ocean, and you discover Rapture in the process. You're effectively just a mute going through the motions. The game builds a really great universe through audio logs that you can find everywhere. You can find recordings of the inhabitants and their roles in what led to the fall of Andrew Ryan and Rapture. You make contact with a guy named Atlas, and he wants you to help save his family and get out of Rapture by blue-pilling Andrew Ryan on the benefits of anarcho-communism. At the halfway point, there is an amazing twist, which I will not spoil, but essentially, you go from black-pilled to blue-pilled, and to finally red-pilled, the ultimate pill, but only if you get the good ending. In terms of atmosphere, the game is still great. It takes place after World War II, so you get those sweet geriatric boomer tunes. The way the atmosphere is propped up is not just from the audio logs, but the environmental design. Having your game take place underwater is a neat idea. And while I think Bioshock 2 has some better looks, it feels less like a fish tank here, and more like a labyrinth. You don't really go through city-like areas or even apartments really, but you do fight the inhabitants, and there are a lot. The game has a different way of approaching difficulty too. Dying doesn't really have consequences. You are just set back to a checkpoint. Even damage on enemies is retained, but don't let that fool you, because holy hell, this game can be hard sometimes and even downright frustrating. You have a health bar with med packs, but unlike first-person games with health bars like Dishonored, where enemies telegraph attacks, Doom, where projectiles are dodgeable, and Fear, where time can be slowed down, Bioshock just says fuck it and throws in hit scan enemies, guaranteeing that you will take a lot of damage and you will not be able to do anything about it. Eventually, you start going through health packs like a millennial on antidepressants and Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Thankfully, you do have plenty of ways to approach most of the encounters presented to you, with the exception of a bit later in the game, which I will thoroughly rip into later. Using the hack utility, you can take control of various security systems throughout the game. You can control turrets or send in what resemble flying claptraps with guns. Thank God they don't talk. The levels are non-linear for the most part, so oftentimes you'll be backtracking and approaching different sides of the same room, and it's handy to have turrets watch your back in these situations. Patrolling throughout the game are the Big Daddies and Little Sisters, usually in pairs. These are tough enemies that take tons of damage and can kill you very quickly if you're not prepared. So make sure to set up some traps with the game's various guns and plasmids, of which can be juggled in a massive inventory you control. Or instead of going guns blazing, use a plasmid to mind control a Big Daddy to have him run through enemy fire, or an enemy minefield and then kill him while his health is low, or grab him for an objective where you need to stay alive in a locked room. The possibilities are endless, and this is why Bioshock is a good game with a great story, instead of a game with a decent story that is completely ruined by its monotonous, terrible, as fun as a catheter insertion gameplay. It's a misconception that Bioshock 2 is a better game because Bioshock 1 has poor gameplay. I disagree. Bioshock 1 has great gameplay. It's the gunplay that suffers. While you can approach challenges in different ways, constantly experimenting and checking out how the AI works, which I will also talk about in a second, the guns simply do not quite have the impact that you want. Most of them feel like pea shooters, the animations sometimes look comical, like a child enthusiastically shaking a toy gun, and the sound effects leave much to be desired. There's also the issue of switching between guns and plasmids. Even on a PC, with hotkeys, it's kind of tricky to really change up your playstyle on the fly unless you pause and enter a menu, and with the way your health drains, you really do not want to give the enemy a second of free hits. Thankfully, the game helps redeem itself with its good AI. Enemies utilize their environments and are varied enough to provide some variety. Varied enough. Who the fuck wrote this script? Anyway, you have enemies that have various affinities, so some will do fire damage, and you can get plasmids to counter them. Many enemies will either take cover from afar, run at you in a desperate attempt, allowing you to utilize short-range weapons like your shotgun or wrench. And to really note on that really quick, the game doesn't really have a whole lot of melee weapons, despite a lot of enemies being in melee range. This sequel did improve upon this a little bit, though, but it is a bit disappointing that most of the tough enemies in the game are just shooting at you from afar with machine guns. It's actually kind of frustrating at times. But they are fairly clever. In addition to running at you, taking cover, they will also go on walls, and sometimes when they're taking damage, they'll either retreat or use their environment. So if you set them on fire, sometimes they'll dunk themselves in some nearby water. And of course, if they take damage, they can actually utilize the healing machines that you can use. And if you hack one of the healing machines, they'll actually get killed by them if they use it. So that's pretty cool. They also respond differently depending on the ammunition you have. So armor-piercing rounds for big daddies and robots, and anti-personnel rounds for meaty flesh. So there's a lot of things to juggle around. You have different types of ammo, and in fact, the beginning of the game kind of feels like a survival game with those little bits of horror. So it's almost like a survival horror at the very, very beginning, but once you start getting more weapons, you don't worry about running out of ammo too much, unless it's for your favorite gun, in which case you're going to be swapping weapons around quite a bit because you're always running out of ammo, or a certain type of ammo for one gun, so you're going to switch over to another, so there's a lot of switching going on. This is why I really meant that the plasmids could have been implemented a little bit better, because you could be juggling them both a little bit more effectively. Again, the sequel fixed this, but Bioshock 1's gameplay, still great. That is until the latter half, in which you reach the first big twist in the story, and the game starts to get way too comfy with corridors. It's still non-linear, but the corridors leave for little room to maneuver, and it's incredibly easy to get killed, once again, because of your limited health. Also, at one point, the game decides to mess with your plasmids and mess with your maximum health. So there's one point in time where you're just going to be dying so much because of a scripted event in the game. Also, the enemy variety and new weapons completely dries out by the 5 to 6 hour mark, so the game blows its load a little too quickly. You'll be doing a lot of the same thing over and over again in the latter half. At several points in the game, you'll need a set of items to progress, which means you need to search every room and every corner for every item. Thankfully, that ties in well with finding the game's audio logs. So while you might be going insane looking for the last item in a level or trying to find a big daddy with a little sister for extra Adam and to unlock the good ending, which you need to do, you need to get all 21 little sisters for the good ending, you at least get some nice backstory in the process. And you're going to want to find every audio log you can, because if you don't, you're going to be underwhelmed by the main story. Not because it's bad, but because you're going to have very little context and involvement as to what is going on, and you're not going to be as into it. However, unlike terrible video games, you're not kept in the dark until the very end and then given a giant info dump. If you decide you want to have an interest in the story after the twist, well, the game does give time to elaborate, lets you soak in all the details from the characters, and there's more audio logs to collect to really dig more into the story and the twists. So even though most of the plot is in the audio logs, which I really hate in video games, sometimes hidden from the player especially, at least the story is paced out well and it's not some dumb twist dumped on you at the end. The only Bioshock game I completed before this one was Bioshock Infinite, and I almost beat 2 before that, before I lost my save file, so I've been around the block a few times with this franchise. I've been meaning to play 1 for ages though. I finally completed it this week, and it was very much worth it. I give it an 8.5 out of 10 playing it today. The version you are seeing me play is the remastered version, which has some tweaks and improvements, such as better graphics and support for newer operating systems, as well as extra content, but it runs more unstable and arguably with worse sound since EAX support was dropped. Although it does support 7.1, which sounds great on my home theater. It was also a buggy mess on launch. I experienced about 3 crashes while playing, including a corrupted save file. You can beat the game in about 12 hours, and I highly recommend playing it. It might not have waifus. Character models may look ugly as dicks on a good day, but unlike Bioshock Infinite, the gameplay didn't make me want to pull the shotgun out of my computer monitor, stick the barrel end in my mouth, and pull the trigger. The gameplay was engaging enough for me to get through it despite my many criticisms of it, and the good ending leaves me with such wholesomeness that I can't get mad at its faults. Hey, thanks for watching. Before I leave, I'd like to make a few announcements. One is that I've finally launched the official Technical Miracle Discord. We got some fun going on in there, so check it out. We're really lax on moderation, so go a little crazy, just don't do anything illegal. And I also got a Patreon if you want to toss me a buck to help me with the production of these videos, link in the description. Doesn't matter if it's as low as $1, it lets me know that people are interested in supporting and watching my content from a monetary standpoint, so every dollar actually does mean a lot to me. It's not just $1 will make a better video, it's $1 is saying, hey, I can actually put a little bit more time into this because people are interested and are willing to pay for it. Finally, I will be in Canada for about 2 weeks, as many of you already know, when a filthy half-blood Canadian, such as myself, hits of age, he or she, or they, because Canada really cares about their pronouns, a half-blood citizen has to go into the woods, kill a moose, eat its still-beating heart, and then sleep in it like a tauntaun overnight, or until XURR sees some kind of spirit vision. I will try to pre-plan a video if I get review code for some games, and have it uploaded while I'm gone, but assume that there won't be anything after this video for a bit. I will be on Discord if you want to chat, answer some questions, whatever you guys want to do. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, I'll see you next time, I'm out.